You have owners. They own you. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Who do you trust to give you the news? Your answer might be different than the person next to you. Maybe you go to left-wing sources or right-wing sources. It all depends. Now, who do you trust to fact-check the news for you? I guarantee most people will say myself. You will research the story for yourself and figure out what is true and what is false. I think that is the safest way to learn the truth. Would you trust a big organization to fact-check the news for you? How about social media companies or mainstream news outlets? What if I told you that is exactly what is happening? There is a non-profit organization that has taken it upon themselves to fact-check the news and rate different sources as trustworthy or untrustworthy. This organization, known as the Trust Project, has partnered with many corporate media outlets across the world and with the biggest social media companies to decide what news you can and cannot read.
Also interesting is, remember, it's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us.
I don't trust anyone to tell me what is true and what is false. I will decide that for myself, but out of everyone, I certainly won't trust the people who have lied to me for so long to then do a 180 degrees and present me the truth. It is a new tactic to pull the curtain over our eyes, so we don't get to see the people operating behind the scenes.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain!
The Trust Project was started up by Sally Lerman, an award-winning journalist who has contributed to Scientific America, Health, The Washington Post, Salon, Nature, The Atlantic, Nature Medicine, The Boston Globe, The New York Times, and The DNA Files, and NPR. With the help of Santa Clara University, she began working on the Trust Project in 2014 for, as she describes it, quote, to strengthen the public confidence in the news through accountability and transparency, end quote. Early on, Lerman has been working with the head of Google News, Richard Greengrass, who is the co-founder of the Trust Project. During an interview, when discussing the current state of journalism, Greengrass said this.
How do we help them be good citizens? How do we constructively help them understand an issue, understand the potential solutions of an issue, such that they can develop their own better understanding of the issue and play their role as citizens? How can we, as I said today, through efforts like constructive journalism, not tell people what to think, but give them help in how to think about an issue.
He speaks of helping people be good citizens. He speaks about how they can teach people not what to think, but how to think about a topic. This is still him talking about controlling how people think. True journalism puts out the facts and lets people make up their own mind. Journalists can manipulate what people think on a topic by telling them how they should think about that topic. How you think about guns or immigration or social services constructs what people think about these issues. It is two sides of the same coin, but he is trying to present it as if it is liberating people's minds instead of caging it. What the Trust Project does is it analyzes different news sources and stories and rates them based on trustworthiness. It analyzes who funds them, how credible are the reporters, where did they get their information from, their journalistic ethics practices in order to improve the journalistic standards, accuracy, and transparency in our world. You can explore the Newsroom Transparency Tracker to see what the Trust Project does. It states on the website that it works for the Trust Project in order to categorize all the news outlets. It states, quote, a collaboration between PEN America and the Trust Project, the tracker encourages media outlets to be accountable to the public and empower the public to make informed choices about the news they watch, listen to, and read, end quote. PEN America is a non-profit organization that describes itself as defending free expression throughout the world. When the Trust Project officially launched in November 2017, Google, Facebook, and Twitter all immediately went on to use the Trust Indicator. These are the major platforms where people get their news from. These platforms have taken it upon themselves what you are allowed to say and what subjects you are allowed to talk about. Remember, Facebook will ban you if you share InfoWars clips. Twitter was banning accounts for using the hashtag #LearnToCode when journalists were being laid off, and Google will suppress search results based on their own bias. Now they decide what news you can read and what you can share. If an article is shared that is debunking a topic that does not come from the Trust Project, then it will not be labeled as a reputable news source. It is another way for these platforms to control how you think and control the information flow. How did the Trust Project know what direction to take the organization to know what people were looking for in their news? They conducted interviews with people. They did so across the world, but I question the tactics used. For instance, when it came to the US interviews, they conducted interviews with less than 20 people. 18 people, according to their own report they released on their website. They also interviewed people across the pond in Europe. A total of 11 people across the continent, including Ireland, Germany, and Turkey. If they did interview more people and then decided to leave it off of their report, they didn't say so. So I am going with the information that they have provided, which is a total of 29 people across 2 continents. So these 29 people are the census they use to dictate how news should be conducted across the world. They would have had a better pool of people to pull from if they had conducted their survey online using their partner Facebook or Twitter, which has access to millions of people all across the world. Their methodology is quite flawed. The Trust Project works with over 100 news organizations. Originally, the partners in the Trust Project was the DPA News Agency, The Economist, the Globe and Mail, Hearst Television, the Independent Journal Review, Haymarket Media, Institute for Nonprofit News, Italy's La Repubblica and La Stampa, Reach plc, which is a German paper, and the Washington Post. Since then, many more have joined the Trust Project, including Bay Area News Group, CBC News, Heavy.com, the Toronto Star, Voice of Orange County, the Walrus, and the Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism. They also include some other heavy hitters such as Sky News, PBS, the Star Tribune, and the Canadian Press. Recently, the Trust Project has announced that it was becoming an independent non-profit organization using the $2.25 million donated to the organization from the Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Facebook, the Democracy Fund, and Santa Clara University's Markkula Center for Applied Ethics. We are about to see how all of these groups have been closely linked together. Craig Newmark and his philanthropies, Pierre Omidyar and his Democracy Fund, and another supporter, the Knight Fund. Craig Newmark is most well known for his creation of the website Craigslist. He has been trying to break into the news industry since at least 2006 when he funded the website newsassignment.net, but we will cover them more in just a bit. Newmark, with an estimated net worth of $1.3 billion, donated about $143 million in 2018 to all different types of organizations. He is a Democratic Party donor, donating to the presidential campaigns of John Kerry in 2004, Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, and Hillary Clinton in 2016. He created Craig Newmark Philanthropies in 2016. Newmark has been closely linked with the Democracy Fund and Pierre Omidyar. Newmark sits as an advisor on the board of Electronic Frontier Foundation, which receives funding from Omidyar's Democracy Fund and from PolitiFact, who are also supported by Omidyar. As I stated a minute ago, Newmark helped fund newsassignment.net by donating to it $10,000. The WordPress website never seemed to have made it out of the beta phase and properly launched, but it was supposed to be an open source website where journalists and the public could come together, share information in order to report on news stories. They were hoping to break out into the mainstream media by having their stories shared by big sources such as the New York Times. The website seems to be dead now. The last post I could find on the site was from March 12, 2011. The site was created by Jay Rosen, a New York University professor of journalism. This is where it all begins to tie together. Rosen received the funding for his site by multiple people and organizations, including $10,000 by the Sunlight Foundation, $75,000 from Cambrian House, and $100,000 from Routers, including the $10,000 from Newmark. Newmark sat as an advisor to the Sunlight Foundation since its founding in 2006 and later moved to the board of directors. Routers is owned by the powerful Thompson family, who we will cover shortly. Several years after the launch of this site, Rosen went on to become an advisor for Pierre Omidyar's organization, First Look Media. Omidyar is also involved with the Trust Project through his foundation, the Democracy Fund, who gave the Trust Project part of the $2.25 million that has allowed them to become a non-profit organization. Omidyar is a founder of eBay, and this has been the source of his estimated $13.1 billion net worth. He is another major Democratic Party donor. He donated to both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton in 2008, and over the years has given an estimated $200,000 to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and $150 to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. He is deep in bed with George Soros and his philanthropy work through his other organization, Omidyar Network Fund, donating to both Open Society Foundation and the Tides Foundation. He is also a major donor to the Sunlight Foundation, just like Craig Newmark. Democracy Fund has donated to PolitiFact, who has received heavy criticism for how it fact-checks the news, accused of holding a distinct left-wing bias. In 2017, Omidyar pledged $100 million to help fight fake news by funding investigative journalism. Omidyar is also a donor to the Clinton Foundation. Omidyar is also the owner of PayPal, the website used by many independent journalists and YouTubers in order to make money for the work that they do. Lately, the technocrats have waged a financial warfare against those who do not conform to their standards by taking away the people's means of income, and PayPal was not only one of the originators, but also one of the worst to do so. This financial warfare has become worse as big companies such as MasterCard and Chase Bank have begun engaging in this financial unpersoning by taking away people's income. But if you thought that was bad, it's about to get worse. Omidyar is also one of the main backers of the Anti-Defamation League, who have been extremely effective at getting platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook to ban pages and people who speak on subjects they don't like, and also getting these platforms to change their terms of service to implement more censorship under the name of hate speech. Most of the YouTubers who have been removed from the platform, including the recent bannings of people like James Alsop, was done by the ADL. And the ADL even released a hit list just a few months ago of people on social media that need to be removed. With Omidyar's funding, the ADL released a new Silicon Valley Center that teamed up with Facebook, Twitter, Google, and Microsoft, all Trust Project partners, to, quote, fight hate online, end quote, through the Cyber Hate Problem Solving Lab. Along with Omidyar, Craig Newmark is also a financier of the ADL and even sits on its tech advisement board, giving the organization $100,000 in 2017. The Knight Foundation is also a contributor to the Trust Project. They have, just like the other two organizations, funded the Sunlight Foundation. The Knight Foundation has worked with Craig Newmark back in 2018 when the two came together to provide $1.2 million to Duke's University Reporters Lab to create a fact-checking app called FactStream. The information used by FactStream is pulled from the Washington Post, PolitiFact, and FactCheck.org. The Knight Foundation is also an investor in NewsGuard, a website extension that labels websites with a green, yellow, or red indicator to whether they are trustworthy or whether they push fake news. However, NewsGuard has been very biased in their labeling and has been linked back to government insider and propagandists. Those who sit on the NewsGuard board of directors is Tom Ridge, who was the Secretary of Homeland Security under the George W. Bush administration. Many have pointed that the green, yellow, red indicators on NewsGuard is very similar to the terror alert implemented in the US by the Bush administration after the 9/11 attacks, which was implemented by Rich. But he is not the only member of the government that sits on NewsGuard's advisory board. Don Baer is the former White House Communication Director of the Clinton administration. Michael Hayden is the former military general and is the former director of the CIA, former director of the National Security Agency, and former principal deputy director of the National Intelligence of the George W. Bush administration. Elise Jordan is the former speechwriter for Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Anders Fogh Rasmussen is the former Prime Minister of Denmark, former Secretary General of NATO, and founder of the Alliance of Democracies Foundation. Richard Stengel is the former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy for the Obama administration. You also have co-founder of NewsGuard, Gordon Krovitz, a former Wall Street executive who served as executive vice president to Dow Jones and is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. The CFR is a think tank that has an unbelievable amount of influence over U.S. foreign policy. It was created by a group known as the Inquiry, made up of 150 members. Many of these were advisors to Woodrow Wilson's administration and went with them to the 1919 peace talks after the conclusion of World War I. A few of its founding members include David Rockefeller Jr., Paul Warburg, who served as its director in 1921, Edward M. Mouse, and Walter Lippmann, who was the head of research for the Inquiry. For some of you who have watched my videos in the past, you may recognize these names. That's because several of these members who created the Council on Foreign Relations are the same people that were involved during Woodrow Wilson's administration to create the Balfour Declaration, and also many of them were the same people that sponsored and financed the Kalergi Plan, which was to flood Europe with Middle Eastern and African migrants in order to change the demographic. Richard Kalergi actually created what was the precursor to the European Union. The CFR includes individual and corporate members such as Bill and Hillary Clinton, George Soros, Rupert Murdoch, Joe Biden, Tulsi Gabbard, Bill Gates, Google, the Bilderberg Group, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who co-founded the Trilateral Commission with David Rockefeller, the son of David Rockefeller Jr., who started the CFR, and President of the U.S. Herbert Hoover. Other corporations include JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, PepsiCo, ExxonMobil, American Express, MasterCard, Bloomberg Philanthropies, BP Oil, the Blackstone Group, and many more. Returning to Krovitz, he is also the editor and contributor to the American Enterprise Institute, a neoconservative war hawk think tank that has people such as John Bolton and Paul Wolfowitz. AEI was influential in persuading the American people to support the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and has advocated for the U.S. military to be used as the world's police. AEI was closely associated with PNAC, the Project for a New American Century, that was also very war hawkish, calling for a new Pearl Harbor back in 1997, 4 years before 9/11, as a means to further support for the U.S. military-industrial complex. NewsGuard's system has been effective at its main goal. A Gallup poll showed that people using the NewsGuard indicator were more likely to share stories with a green light indicator and less likely to share stories with a red light indicator. NewsGuard consistently gives a high ranking to websites such as CNN, The Washington Post, and Voice of America, despite its blatantly false stories they have pushed. This includes the coverage by CNN of the Covington Catholic kids, The Washington Post Russia hacking the Vermont power grid, and the fact that the Washington Post's parent company, Amazon, has received $600 million from the CIA. A former associate director of Voices of America, Ted Lippian, is on record of saying that the website has turned to fluff pieces. Why am I talking about NewsGuard so much? It is because NewsGuard is a partner with the Trust Project. In fact, NewsGuard uses the Trust Indicator in their full review of websites. NewsGuard's history of bias and their connection back to government and these think tanks trashes the Trust Project's image of trying to improve the news media. All three of these organizations that I have already listed gave money to the Poynter Institute for Media Studies. The list of Poynter Institute's largest 2018 and 2019 donors includes Google News Initiative, the Open Society Foundation, and the Charles Koch Foundation. The Poynter Institute took over operation of the website PolitiFact in 2018 in order for it to be easier for PolitiFact to receive charitable donations to support their work. These donations include all of these organizations stated above: the Craig Newmark Philanthropies, the Democracy Fund, the Knight Foundation, but also includes the Ford Foundation. A Google Foundation has donated money to Poynter so they could continue to expand its fact-checking network. The partners of the Trust Project have some big names associated with them. The Globe and Mail, a well-known and old newspaper in Canada that can trace its roots back to 1844. The Globe and Mail is owned by the Woodbridge Company, a private holding company owned by the rich and powerful Thompson family, with a net worth of $41.14 billion. David and Peter Thompson became the chairman of Woodbridge after their father, Kenneth Thompson, died in 2006. Woodbridge is the primary investment tool for the Thompson family, owning 62% of the news organization Reuters. The Thompson family owns many different brands, from tax and investment, the pharmaceutical industry, software, big data, publishing, and much more. The Economist is an old newspaper dating back to 1843 that focuses more on business, finance, and the economy. However, it is more well known for being a Rothschild-controlled newspaper used to spread the influence and propaganda of the Rothschild family. External partners include well-known social media and tech companies. These include Google, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, and Bing. I can confirm that at least Google, Twitter, and Facebook have very shady histories when it comes to manipulating what people can and cannot see on the internet. We have video testimony from Google executives themselves that show that they go out of their way to manipulate what you can read and what you get to see. Let's start with Facebook. Facebook has been the worst platform when it comes to censoring and shadow banning. They have banned thousands of users and pages for various reasons, many unwarranted. Alex Jones was banned off of Facebook along with other prominent right-wing figures in one of their purges. They did this after other social media and entertainment platforms had done so, such as YouTube and iTunes. Facebook deemed InfoWars and Alex Jones equivalent of a terrorist organization or a hate group. This means that regular users could be banned for simply sharing their clips on their platform. Since then, Facebook has turned its sights on the average user. Now, they ban whatever they consider to be white supremacy and white nationalism. However, their standards for what is considered white supremacy are really low. According to Facebook's community standards on dangerous individuals and organizations, a hate organization is classified as, quote, any association of 3 or more people that is organized under a name, sign, or symbol and that has an ideology, statements, or physical action that attack individuals based on characteristics including race, religion affiliation, nationality, ethnicity, gender, sex, sexual orientation, serious disease, or disability, end quote. It further states, quote, we do not allow symbols that represent any of the above organizations or individuals to be shared on our platforms without context that condemns or neutrally discusses the content, end quote. This can easily then apply to anyone being offensive of white culture or people who are constantly being attacked on the platform, meaning they will be banned for doing so. For instance, if you discuss what is currently happening in South Africa with the farmers, you could see your account permanently banned. Facebook is also terrible at protecting their users' data. We all probably remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal that saw the information of 50 million users handed over by Facebook. This was a huge scandal last year. Facebook managed to sneak around with next to no repercussions, only facing a $5 billion fine. They have not changed their policies whatsoever, still harvesting all your information on their platforms to be sold off at their discretion. Facebook's Messenger app collects all your photos, texts, calls, location, and much more if you install it. On top of all this, It turned out that a huge amount of Facebook's users were fake accounts. On May 23, 2019, Facebook announced that they had deleted 2.2 billion fake accounts and had deleted 1.2 billion accounts in the fourth quarter of 2018. Facebook is also the owner of the popular social media app and website Instagram. Instagram has millions of users every day and millions of pieces of data shared every hour. If Facebook is on board with the Trust Project, then so is Instagram. Earlier this year, Facebook decided to hire Jennifer Newstead, a legal advisor to Trump's State Department. Some may recognize her name, and that is because she was the co-author of the Patriot Act, the controversial freedom-stopping legislation that took away the constitutional rights of the American citizen, allowing them to be detained indefinitely and stripping them of their rights to legal counsel, allow law enforcement to survey whoever they wanted without a warrant, and much worse. The Patriot Act was passed shortly after the 9/11 attacks on October 26, 2001. Twitter is the next most popular social media website after Facebook and Instagram. Jack Dorsey has received a lot of criticism for their opaque and biased ways of enforcing their terms of service. People have been banned from using the site for no real good reason, and the banning is almost exclusively one direction. The failures of Twitter and Jack Dorsey were put in the spotlight earlier this year when independent journalist Tim Pool faced off against Jack and his lawyer Vijaya Gadde on the Joe Rogan Experience. On that podcast, Pool called them out for their shady dealings and biased system for banning individuals. Since then, nothing has changed and it has only gotten worse. Google is probably the worst of the worst when it comes to manipulating search results, data harvesting, and selling personal data. Long gone are the days of Google claiming, "Don't be evil," and have instead decided they will jump headfirst into George Orwell's famous dystopian novel. Google controls most of the information on the internet these days. About an estimated 90% or more of the search end results come from Google. This means that if Google decides to unperson you, delete your very existence from the internet, then nearly nobody could ever find you again. This might be good if you're looking to disappear, but if you run a website that you want people to find, read, and interact with, this is disastrous. This is the danger of Google joining the Trust Project. They will bury the stories and websites that are not considered reliable so that only the stories of the news sites that they deem credible will surface. Google is the owner of YouTube, which means that the Trust Project indicator is and will be used to promote and derank videos based on their content and the producer of the content. Many have noticed lately that mainstream news sources such as CNN, BBC, CBC, and many more have been pushed by YouTube to the top of the recommendation list despite the fact that the videos don't receive that many views. Take a scroll through the CBC News YouTube channel sometime. They have nearly 1.5 million subscribers but pull in maybe a couple thousand views on their videos except for their bigger stories, such as the coverage of the Hurricane Dorian. Regardless, they don't receive that many views yet are propped up while the original content creators are pushed down. Even The National, CBC's flagship show with more than 500,000 subscribers, receives very few views, and a lot of times the ratio of thumbs up to thumbs down is not very good. Rough estimate, they probably average 2-to-1 thumbs up to thumbs down. If nothing else, the fact that Google is a government contractor is all you need to know. The Trust Project is a union of big tech social media platforms, mainstream journalism, and billionaires to come together and dictate what is and what is not real news. It is a revamp of processes already put in place, another attempt to control the narrative. Instead of simply doing fact checks such as Snopes and PolitiFact do, it is dictating what is considered trustworthy, and it is in fact a much more effective strategy. With fact-checking sites, it can backfire on the establishment when mainstream news stories pushed by the outlets such as CNN, MSNBC, CBC, and others are fact-checked and turn out to be false. With a trust indicator, they don't need to worry about a fact-check disrupting their narrative, since most normies will see the mark and simply let these technocrats decide what is trustworthy, allowing these outlets to continue to spew out their propaganda with little to no repercussion. The term fake news, contrary to popular belief, was not coined by President Donald Trump. He simply weaponized it better. The term was coined by Hillary Clinton and the mainstream media to explain why she lost the 2016 presidential election, that it was a series of sites and individuals spreading fake news orchestrated by the Russian government to get their preferred candidate into the White House. The problem arose once people resisted the narrative. People saw through the facade and began fact-checking the corporate news and began exposing their lies. The lying news media was already something people were aware of, but was not something people pushed in the mainstream. Ironically, the corporate news outlets put their metaphorical gun in their own mouth and pulled the trigger and unleashed a wave of criticism and skepticism not just across their own country, but across the world. They have spent the last few years running damage control for that mistake. This is where the Trust Project comes in. The independent fact-checkers have damaged the news credibility. The ones who have been most guilty of spreading fake news are the ones who are now in control of the Trust Project and the ones financing it. This is just another veil they are attempting to pull down in front of our eyes, and it is beginning to work. In a tweet thread put out by Trust Project's Twitter account, they claim that the Trust Indicator is improving the confidence people have in certain news outlets. In this case, the Trust Indicator improved readers' trust in the Daily Mirror by 8%. According to the Trust Project, upwards of 327 million people every month see the Trust Indicator across 126 news sites, and people are becoming more trustworthy of a publication once they saw the Trust Indicator. So I ask you again, who do you trust to fact check the news for you?